What's up, you sweaty nerds and greasy degenerates? Topaz has officially released in Honkai Star Rail, and you know what that means. It's time to complain about the fact that they nerfed her butt. Oh wait, no, that was yesterday's video. It's time to see where she rests in the meta. Where does she fall on the tier lists? So, let's go ahead and dive in and see where her fat juicy butt landed. Alright, so here we are on pridewin.gg. And if you wanted to take a look at this for yourself, you can click the link in the pinned comment and description below. And I do recommend coming and taking a look at this for yourself because a lot of great theory crafters pull a lot of data together to be able to help out this site. There's a lot of great information here, not just tier lists and such. And they constantly are updating the criteria and the way that they make the tier list and other things like that. They're constantly tweaking and making adjustments to better fit the meta of the current time. So definitely come over and take a look at this. It is respected by the community as a whole and accepted by the community as a whole. It is not perfect. Okay, it's not perfect, but it is a very, very good gauge of where characters sit in the meta. And Topaz has rested her fine ass here at S tier. Be aware, I'm taking currently a look at the single target damage. She is a single target damage dealer, so this is her ideal category. However, we also have blast damage and AoE damage to take a look at, and we will in just a moment. Let's just quickly take a look at where she sits and where we can take a look at a comparison unit to look at with her. She is an enabler of follow-up attack damage. She also has very solid damage of her own, so it's actually very awesome to see her here because she's not considered like, oh my god, oh Jesus, a hyper carry DPS or something like that. Like, you know, Dan Hung and Jing Liu, who managed to sit at S+ tier no matter which category you look at. People were worried that she would fall off depending on the scenario, and she's managed to fool a lot of people, not fool a lot of people, but she's managed to, I guess, prove a lot of people wrong and keep herself at a really high status. We can compare her to Kafka, who is an enabler with some high damage of her own. It's the best unit to compare to in terms of that. So it's really cool to see her sitting really high up here. Kafka's a little bit falls off a little bit at single target because she's a blast damage and AoE unit. So it does make sense to see her a little bit down below. And it makes sense to see Topaz a little bit higher for at least single target. So let's take a look at the blast damage section. You notice that Kafka comes up and, you know, meets her up here. And if you take a look at AoE, Topaz disappears and Kafka remains. So they're kind of like two different ends of a spectrum within the same realm. It's actually kind of goofy to see Kafka here. She should honestly be over here in my opinion, but she's not a debuffer. She's an enabler. They're both enablers. The reason why Topaz is sitting here in the debuffer category is because she has a debuff technically that she applies to enemies. So you see her drop here to A tier, which is actually pretty decent. She's a single target damage dealer, so it's cool to still see her up here at A tier, because a lot of other units who are good at blast damage or AoE tend to fall really, really hard the moment you take a look at their status in the AoE realm. For example, Clara is an S+ tier unit for AoE, but if you take a look at single target, she falls not to A tier, but to B tier. So when you put them in an environment that they're not very comfortable in, some units tend to drop really far. It's actually pretty surprising to see Topaz, when she's in an environment that she's not comfortable in, she doesn't drop that far. She still remains at A tier, which is pretty darn good. So it's very nice to see that for her. Because I was actually a bit surprised. She's a single target damage dealer. They may have tested a lot of different scenarios for her to see whether she can clear mobs quickly and then move on to new targets, and I imagine that she must be able to do that. What I think's going on is it's really not Topaz, it's Nummy. The fact that there's two of them in the action order, she can switch targets with proof of debt using her skill. After she takes care of an enemy, and then Nummy will immediately perform a follow-up attack once she does that. So I think that that's what's going on It's not quite the same as like Seela, where Seela defeats an enemy, she gets resurgence, she immediately gets to switch to another enemy, and she's actually buffed when she does that. Topaz still remains efficient in terms of switching enemies. It's just not quite as efficient as someone like, I guess you could say, Seela, or that type of specific thing. So she's pretty awesome, actually, as being an enabler slash debuffer, while still staying really high up on the tier list, even when she's out of her realm of comfortability. And it's interesting to see Gwenaifen so high up. When you look at blast damage, she's right up here next to her. But to be fair, Gwenaifen seems like a really good DOT unit. She's like a budget Kafka for fire damage. So it's pretty cool to see that. And her skill does deal blast damage, so it makes a lot of sense. Unlike a character like Sampo, whose Sampo's skill is a little bit AoE. You don't get to like choose who you're really attacking, so it kind of goes all over the place. Gwenaifen is far more consistent, and again, unlike Sampo requires a lot of effect hit rate to apply his DOTs. You do not need much effect hit rate at all for Gwenaifen. She's very similar to Kafka in a lot of ways, including the fact that she has a 100% base chance with most of her DOT applications, which basically means she only needs about like 10% effect hit rate to be able to pretty much guarantee that she applies DOTs, unlike some of the other characters like Sampo. So she's looking pretty good, but again, we're talking about Topaz mostly here today, who sits really high up. She's a SSA when you look at single target blast and AoE, which is pretty good. You see that Kafka is an ASS, which is very fitting because she has a really nice ass, and unfortunately Topaz has a really nice ass, but it was nerfed, so it's very fitting to see her ass go the opposite way, because when she dropped in part 2, when she was revealed, her ass went the other way too. Anyways, if you found this information helpful or entertaining in any way, shape, or form, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, and maybe Topaz will let you touch her flat pancake butt. Anyways, peace out.